the city. Politics, progress, game boards, objects viewed like pawns till we change up our mindset. Value of the dollars at the center of this conflict, where lives only matter if they serve to make a profit. But if a midget sees further on the shoulders of the giant, then we should see further than the tyrant and build a future within alliance where success is our science in the quest to go higher. It's the heart of the city.
Welcome home. This is another episode of HeartCity TV, and I'm your host, Kendall Chase. I am truly excited about tonight's topic. The children are our future. I am a proud alumni of the Philadelphia School District, like many of those of you in our audience, and we have been in this journey over the last few years about what is best for our children, and especially in the school district, in the schools, and how that impact trickles out into our community. And tonight we're going to dive right into it. The school district has announced who the next superintendent of our amazing city and their schools will be. And we're going to be welcoming to our city in June, Mr. Tony Wallington. And I'm excited about that. We have a lot of work to do to help ourselves get ready for his arrival so that we are there to support him and the district in their work to serve our children, to serve our communities, to serve all those that are impacted by this work. And today's guests are truly vested in that journey with us. And so before we get started with this amazing conversation and dialogue today, we're going to go ahead and open our show up with prayer like we do every single week. And today I am excited because I have my spiritual leader, my spiritual mentor. He has been there for me since my teen years, Mr. Reverend David Brown. I'm so used to calling you David or Mr. Brown. You know, I had to switch it up real quick, but I'm excited to have you here today. And I just thank you for making time in your schedule to join, me and the HeartCity family this evening. And I'm going to ask you to let's just go ahead and get started and pray and cover this show with what we need, to have this dialogue tonight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to ask folks, wherever they are, just to bow their heads or close their eyes in prayer. We just thank you, Father, with the Creator God, that you've allowed this technology to allow us to get back together, to connect. We ask that you guide our conversation because the children are truly our future. They are our precious gifts. And we know that you have blessed us with allowing us the wherewithal to guide and direct them. Father, we just ask that you continue to guide this conversation. Bless the host, bless the guests, bless the conversation, bless the dialogue, because it will, in fact, get us to a better place if we continue to follow you as the beacon that is our North Star. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. So, Reverend Brown, you have an amazing resume, and I have always been extremely proud of the work that you do. But when we slow down and we just reflect on the work that you have guided us through in the city of Philadelphia, you are one of the only living African Americans inducted into both the Philadelphia Public Relations Association, their Hall of Fame, but also the Philadelphia Advertising Club. You had a 7-year appointment at the Wharton Wesley United Methodist Church, and that is a staple in the West Philadelphia community.
Yes,
Cedar Park, which is in a revitalization, and you help them raise money so that building itself can become continue to be a vital part of the community.
Yes, absolutely.
A champion for change from the Obama administration, and I love Obama.
Yeah, me too.
I call him Uncle Barack in my house. And then you're the diversity advisor to the Office of Dean at Temple University's Klein college of
Mm-hmm.
media
Mm-hmm.
and communication. And if people really understood how much work in media and communication and public relations, that is such a natural fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing some amazing work there. And Temple is also such an important part of the conversation when we talk about children in the future.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
right on that
Absolutely.
Broad Street corridor,
Yep.
where so
Mm-hmm.
many of us traveled when we were going to high school,
High
whether you were
school.
stopping off at engineering and science or you
Mm-hmm.
going to
Mm-hmm.
Central,
Central.
myself going to Girls High,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, we're all on that corridor passing
Mm-hmm.
the Temple stops, knowing
Yep.
that that could be our next stop.
Yes.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you're doing this work now to ensure that diversity is truly and intentionally part of the
Yes.
conversation and the work.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think that it certainly ties into the theme about the children being our future because we know that Temple, as an example, is right in the heart of North Philadelphia, and being able to be a partner with the community, so the folks who live there can also go to school there. I mean, that's key because
Yeah.
people talk about diversity, equity, inclusion as if it's like a destination as opposed to a
Right.
journey, right? You've got to be able to get there, but also as you opened with your comments about the incoming superintendent. We, as colleges and universities within the city of Philadelphia and Temple in particular, have to be in partnership with our K to 12 schools because if
Mhm.
they don't do what they need to do and we can't help them to do that, then there's not the possibility of not only just getting into Temple, but getting out of Temple to be able to continue to move some things forward. So I really do think that, and as a pastor, and I wear that on my sleeve and proudly, that
Yes.
I firmly believe that God blooms makes us bloom wherever we're planted. So the mission field sometimes follows us, so it need not be in a church. It's doing
Mhm.
God's work wherever He puts you to be. So I'm very, very proud of the work that we're doing there, and the work that we have yet to do with this incoming superintendent.
Your tie into you being a pastor. You are an ordained deacon
Yes,
in
that's right.
United Methodist Faith, and
Yeah,
that is a slightly different role than a traditional pastor.
that's right. Yeah,
I
yeah.
grew up watching Amen out
Mm,
of the Spring Garden region of Philadelphia, and we had Deacon Fry, which
right,
you do a little bit of what Deacon Fry did, right? But you do a
right,
lot
right,
more than what Deacon Fry.
right.
Explain to our
Absolutely,
audience what a deacon and how they serve an ordained deacon in
absolutely.
the United Methodist Faith. Tell us a little bit about
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. So, in the United Methodist tradition, you have two orders of clergy. One is considered the elder, one is considered the deacon, and they're on equal terms. But the elder is the person that is responsible for what I call the gathered congregation, folks
that.
who are going to be in churches and things of that nature. Whereas the
Mhm.
deacon is considered the pastor for the dispersed congregation. These are people who may never set foot into a congregation or into a church, but still need the intervention and the connection. So the community, they work together, the elder for the gathered,
Mhm.
the deacon for the dispersed. So my parish, if you will, is Temple University, is the corner of West Philadelphia, is those places that are not traditionally looked at as being places of faith, but they're faith-based folks that are in there that need the work of someone who is committed to the work that God has ordained us to do. So you can't have one or the other. You got to have both. So I'm proudly outside the church while still being connected to the church.
I love that. I love that. And I model my work down here in North Carolina around that
Mm-hmm.
mindset that I'm charged with serving our young people, both in the
Mm-hmm.
church, equally important, those that may never be able to come and step foot for whatever their
Absolutely.
reasons are
Yeah.
into
Mm-hmm.
our building, and
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
do we
Your calling.
continue,
Yeah.
right? How do we
Mm-hmm.
serve them? And so as we close up this
Mm-hmm.
evening, what advice or what charge would you give to our incoming superintendent when
Mm-hmm.
you think of connecting in an intentional way with upper education
Yeah.
institutions? And we have plenty of them in Philadelphia,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
let's speak to to Temple's connection?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one, build on what has preceded you. I think Dr. Height has done some phenomenal things, and we want to be able to build on that. So let's not throw out all the good work that has happened, but be able to build on it. And secondly, establish those partnerships. And I mean that in the truest sense of the word, that it's not just what Temple's doing and what the school district is doing, it's what they're going to do together. There has to be a degree of mutual accountability, because if we are only in our silo, we're never going to build that bridge over to K to 12 and start early. I think that when we talk about college in particular, we need to start talking about that way earlier than when they're seniors. Let's start talking about that in middle school. Let's get into a college going behavior. So even if it's not Temple, it is a place. And you mentioned you went to Girls High, I went to Central. So when we were there, it wasn't a matter of if we were going, it's where we were going. We need to have that degree of intentionality and know that college is not for everybody, but for those for whom it will serve, we got to make sure that they're ready, not just to get in, but to use that as a platform to go out and do some great things.
And I love that, because we do talk a lot about getting in, but we don't really put the emphasis and the work into helping them get out. And when I say get out, not just get out in the end of their freshman year, but to get out successfully.
That's right. Do something with this. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's critical.
Yeah. Well, so I thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure.
I hope
thank
you.
you.
Back with us. I know that somewhere in Cyberland, our mothers have figured out how to get onto YouTube, and they are truly excited to see us on their phones or their iPads, whatever device we've given them. And I'm able to be, part of your parish. And I thank you for all that you put into me.
It's a privilege. Thank you, Kendall.
Thank
absolutely.
You so very much.
Absolutely.
God bless you, and thank you for serving us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Heart City family, we have been covered by prayer, and we have really begun the conversation about how the children are the future and what we can do. This tonight's show is not really going to be about how the children need to change. It will be more of how do we establish some different things in our communities and our schools, and how we support our schools and our incoming superintendent. And we have a commercial to get to, but on the other side of that commercial, we have a phenomenal guest joining us, and I cannot wait to share his story with you about Jasper's House Warriors. We'll see you on the other side.
How's those fries you've been craving? I'm hot and I'm steamy, and oh man, do I smell delicious. I'm calling your name. Oh, Doug. Doug. And if you don't have the right auto insurance coverage, paying for these repairs may be tough to swallow.
Get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem for a whole lot less.
Hey, look, I know you're worried about your commute, but I found a shorter route.
The difference between an agent and a realtor is real.
Less traffic, too.
Neighborhood expertise beyond the listing. That's who we are.
Yeah, man, I told you I got you.
Welcome home. This is Heart City TV. So our next guest is Mr. Lance Jasper Jones. Mr. Jones is the founder of Jasper House Warriors, where they promote awareness for the sickle cell community, as well as mental health in the Los Angeles, California city. He is a music producer. He is a songwriter, a mental health professional. He is completing his master's degree in clinical psychology. This gentleman is doing amazing work in Los Angeles. And I really believe that it is work that we can see and model here in our city of Philadelphia and across the country. I'd like to welcome to our show, Mr. Lance J. Jones. Welcome to Heart City. Welcome home, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, Kendall.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, I know we're on a time difference, so, there's an adjustment in our schedules to make sure that we sync up, but this conversation is so important. And when the opportunity was shared with me for us to connect on air, I was just excited because your work started with a journey that was your own, and it morphed into something bigger that was lasting and sustainable. Tell us how your story and your journey getting to Jasper House Warriors.
Yeah, so I was born with sickle cell anemia,
Mhm.
SS, by the way. And you know, you name it, I've been through it. 10 surgeries on record. I've had both my hips done, and I'm only
Mhm.
33, right?
Right.
And really, my journey began like when I was a little boy.
Mhm.
Doctor said I wasn't supposed to pass, at 7 years old, and here I am, 30 years later, still going.
Mhm.
But that right there shaped how I viewed the world, going in and out of the hospitals. You don't know which crisis or, situation is going to be your last. So
Mhm.
everyone was dire when a doctor is telling your family, at 7 years
Mhm.
old, there's nothing more that you could do for him. And it's just a matter of time.
Mhm.
Um, but that's so many other, people living with sickle cell story as well. Everybody has that age that the doctor said, some is 18, 17, 10 years old.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, yes, we've lost a lot of people. I feel like I'm a vessel, to be a person that was supposed to pass at 7, and still to be here and doing the
Mhm.
things that are opportunities for me.
Yeah.
Um, I can't put it into words, So when it came to Jasper House Warriors, I saw a necessary need in the community, you know, dealing with a lot of youth, and
Mhm.
seeing how sickle cell is affecting them. One thing about sickle cell that makes it different from a lot of different other diseases, such as like cancer or something like that, is that we're born with it. So
Right.
from day one, we don't have the outlook of I'm gonna be a survivor. If you're
Mhm.
diagnosed with cancer, the first thing you're like, I'm gonna be a cancer survivor. But with sickle cell, it's literally you're waiting, to go.
Okay.
And so I see in the youth how they were not living. They were looking to just do things quietly and to themselves,
Yeah.
where like sickle cell won't mess me up. I just want to have a little job where I can sit down and I have to tell them, like, you could be doing the thing that you love. You could be riding
Yeah.
a horse on the beach and going
Yeah.
to a crisis. So we
Mhm.
have to live. But it was definitely a mental health issue when you're going in and out of the hospital. I think I've been hospitalized over 100 times on record, right? So
Mhm.
literally grew up in the hospital as a child, birthdays,
Right.
Christmas,
Right.
pictures and photo albums of me just in the hospital getting gifts. So
Mhm.
when you're living like that, what is your mental state like? But not only the person that's going through it, but then their family, the
Right.
caregivers.
Mhm.
When they get that phone call, it's a whole big mental health thing. So I actually, once I graduated from Marymount California University with my
Okay.
associate's degree, in communications, I went right to Grand Canyon University, and I started my bachelor's in just general psychology. And now I'm
Mhm.
wrapping up my master's in clinical psychology, because we have to start talking about our mental health and how we perceive, our lives with dealing with such a, life-threatening illness such as sickle cell.
Mhm. It- I am grateful that you talk about not living, in the beginning of your story. You talk about how those that suffer from sickle cell or live with sickle cell are not necessarily living, and how you're trying to encourage them to truly live their life. And I see behind you instruments of music. And was that part of your journey of living?
Yeah, so growing up, sports, all types of things like that is out of the question.
Okay.
And so I was looking for an outlet.
Hmm.
And one thing we don't discuss when you have youth, and adults living with such a threatening disease, is that anger, you know, sadness, depression,
Hmm.
anxieties. And if you don't have the outlets that are gifted to a lot of other people just that are living their lives, such as sports, you bottle, you internal, that. So music became something that was just, I can get on the mic or I can get on my instrument and I could just be free. just
Okay.
outright free. I could be somebody else. You know, you can be anything you want within your music. And that became my sanctuary ultimately.
That's wonderful. So, Jasper House Warriors, you
Yes.
guys have done advocacy work. You have connected with the legislation and legislators in the state of California to really make sure that there are protections and safeguards for those that are living with sickle cell. Share with our audience a little bit about that.
So about the legislation, so AB 1105 was one of the bills that came across here in California. I had the pleasure to be one of the speakers advocating for sickle cell patients. So I was like a personal experience speaker, orator in Congress. So that was a tremendous experience. Everybody who worked on that bill are tremendous people. And we were luckily to get that bill passed, I believe, in the second go around, the second year. So yeah, you know, nothing is ever done without opposition. So, but luckily we was able to get that bill passed. And I had the pleasure to give the first speech at the very first opening of a sickle cell clinic here in Los Angeles at Martin Luther King Hospital as well. And it was a moment because growing up, you know, we don't see sickle cell on any wall when you go into the hospitals or anything. Our doctor's office is usually an oncology, hematology, cancer center. So to see something that was for us for the first time ever, you know, and to be a part of it was truly a blessing and an opportunity for myself. And I'll never forget it. Yeah, it was awesome.
So what type of services does Jasper House Warriors provide, and where are you going? What's next?
Yeah. So right now, first and foremost, I just want to give a big shout out to all the Jasper House Warriors team. They keep me going when I get down on myself, but they are awesome. And our team is made of teachers, psychologists, and people living with sickle cell. And one thing that we have done is the first thing that we did, we partnered with a company, a medical company here in San Francisco called Picnic Health. And what Picnic Health does is it helps sickle cell patients to gain their medical records for free of charge, put it on their mobile devices, and that they can share with other people as well, like their parents or spouses or even doctors. But then also for myself, I look at it as an empowerment tool. And what that looks like is when you're going into the ER, we are met with a lot of discrimination in the ER. We're not often heard, you know, and nobody knows their body more than the person with sickle cell, but we're not taken seriously. So what that looks like is instead of, you know, going and bantering with a doctor and saying, hey, this is my treatment, these are the medications that work for me, you can pull it up right on your phone. And now you have the proof, like last time I was here, this was my treatment. You know, these are the medications that I take because it's my full medical records with MRIs, x-rays, you know, doctor notes, everything, your labs, everything, you know, all the medications. So your whole history is there on your phone. So that was one of the first things that we did to gain empowerment tools for people going into the hospitals with sickle cell. Another thing that's recently has happened is I'm a new health coach with University of Pittsburgh under Dr. Charles Jonas Saint. And it's a nationwide program called Charisma. And what we do is we offer health coaching to people living with sickle cell across the country. And what that looks like is, you know, many sickle cell patients don't have anybody to talk to, you know, or to gain experiences from. You know, so even right now, I have participants. I'm here in LA, and I have participants in Chicago, North Carolina, Maryland, you know, Boston, and it's tremendous to hear their stories, to work with them. You know, we have participants getting married, and you know, age ranges from 23 all the way to 50. You know, and it's just a beautiful thing to be a part of their lives, to help them along their journey. And the biggest part of it is to make sure that we can help them gain tools along their journey, you know, that helps them in their personal lives, you know, whether it's just, you know, drinking more waters or nutrition, all of that type of stuff. But then also, more importantly, giving them an ear, somebody that they can relate to and talk to while going through, you know, such a tremendous journey that they're going through.
So in the broader sense, tonight's show is really about the incoming superintendent in Philadelphia. And I would imagine that we have a good number of students in our school district that are living with sickle cell. And how would you, or what would you encourage the incoming superintendent and his team to consider when serving those children?
When serving children in the school systems in Philadelphia and just across the country alone, is understanding the help that they need, the extra care that they need. Sickle cell, for most people that don't know, it's a blood disorder, and that runs through your entire body. One thing that puts us in a crisis and puts us in a hospital is stress, right? So, for instance, what that looks like as a student, when I was in college, I had a crisis in my brain, and it was my very first one I've ever had, and I had to take time away from school. But that's because of the stress and trying to study and keep up with, your classmates and your whole community and society. So when I was growing up, I used to have to take home packets of homework, and do them in the hospital. And it was just really the struggle of trying to keep up and keep up and keep up. And we have to make sure that we understand that mentally they're not at a disadvantage. We have some of the most brightest people living with sickle cell. However, they are at a risk of missing real time from school. And we just need to have safeguards and services in place that keeps them going and keeps them along the same lines as all their other classmates without, just throwing them to the birds. On the East Coast alone, I've heard some crazy stories of people living with sickle cell. We have 25-year-olds that can't read, in Maryland. And so that shouldn't be. We're being pushed through the school system because nobody's taking them serious. Oh, they just feel like, oh, they're just going to pass anyways. They're, let's just get them through. No, because then when they wake up, they're 25, they're 30 years old, and they don't have the proper education.
So Herman Davis is in our comments, and he is very excited about the conversation. And thank you, Herman, for jumping in and sharing your thoughts. He asked, how do we create a Jasper's team here in the Philadelphia area? And how do we partner? And more importantly, how do we create support systems for parents that many of them don't really know where to go and how to create those systems or those partnerships to support their children?
So how do we create a Jasper House Warriors in Philadelphia? One thing that we're doing here in Los Angeles is simply giving sickle cell patients a voice, period. Okay. We do things called Warrior Talk, where we come out with a camera crew and we actually film sickle cell patient stories. Because like I said, one of the main things is people with sickle cell feel like they're not being heard. They feel like they're talking to a wall, and we're not getting the right medical care. We're not getting the right educational, system. So that's one of the main things that we could do in Philadelphia is to make sure that we're providing a platform for people with sickle cell to be heard and to address their needs. That's one of the main factors. And so in the educational system, I see Herman Davis in the comments. Nice to meet you, by the way. I have to say that we have to make sure that these systems are in place. We have and sickle cell doesn't just affect African Americans, but here in the United States, we're the predominant. So we have to give them that voice. And when it comes to the parents, the caregivers, they're the ones that are shouldering the most weight when it comes to their children. So we have to give them also a safe space that we can create conversations, discussions, and solutions of how to band together and make sure our sickle cell patients and people living with sickle cell are successful from the next generations up. And that's one of the biggest things with Jasper House Warriors is that my generation has suffered a lot. But we have to make sure that these systems are in place for the next generations because we are still having children being born with sickle cell. There's no cure. And we must make sure that they don't go through the same things that my generation has gone through.
I want to thank you so very much for joining us this evening. And I think there is a greater conversation. I'd love to invite you back and maybe some partners that may be able to really connect your story and your work in Los Angeles to something tangible and real in the Philadelphia area. You spoke to my heart. I really do understand in a very intimate way, personal way, uh, the impact of our physical health on our mental journey and our success. And I just thank you for being big enough and bold enough to carry this journey, to carry the weight, create a space that others can copy, but in a very positive way, copy for others to have that space, for the parents, for the children. I thank you and I welcome home. You are now part of the HeartCity family. So you just come back whenever you want, sir. You are at home. Just knock on the door and say, "Hey, Kendall, I'm here." And we would love to share your story and any of the amazing work that you have going on. Thank you so much. HeartCity family, Jasper House Warriors. We're going to drop their website on our page. You can see where they've tagged us on social media. They're doing amazing work. And I truly believe that their work is something that we need to really look at and see how can we provide those supports, much like Mr. Herman Davis was saying in our chat tonight. He's on YouTube. We need to have these conversations and do this work. Listen, on the other side, we have a commercial coming up, and then I have an amazing panel coming before you, and I am excited about what they have to share with you tonight. The conversation around the children are our future, building the roadmap of resources for future generations, specifically in our school district here in Philadelphia. I look forward to this conversation on the other side of this commercial. This is HeartCity TV.
You ready to see what $2.5 trillion in spending power can really do? You ready to pool these resources and rebuild our infrastructure?
You ready to support your sisters and brothers that are building businesses at record rates?
This what trust looks like, what love looks like, what us looks like, yeah.
You ready to give back to the culture that's given you so much? You ready to continue the legacy of Black economic excellence? You ready to work hard and play harder? You ready to let the black dollar circulate?
This what trust looks like, what love looks like, what us looks like, yeah. New type of leveling, new type of excellence.
You ready for a banking platform designed for us to win?
¿Estás listo para unirte en nuestra colección de soñadores?
You ready for this marathon to continue? You ready to bet on black for real? Then get ready for Greenwood.
New type of leveling, new type of excellence.
This is our time.
Welcome home. This is HeartCity TV, and I'm your host, Kendall Chase. The children are our future. And the guests that we have joining us on this half of the show, they are true key stakeholders in the community, in the city, but most importantly, in the future of our children. Joining us for, I mean, we've had him several times because his points are they add so much value to the conversation around our children, around their education. We have Mr. Eric Marsh, who is a parent, community organizer, and community outreach organizer for WHYY's N.I.C.E program, of which HeartCity is a partner. Welcome home, Eric. How are you this evening?
Glad to be here, Kendall. I'm so happy to be here, and this conversation, this topic is near and dear to my heart. So I'm looking forward to getting into it with you and the rest of the guests.
Yes, and we have two more guests joining us. So we also have Miss Shakeda Gaines, who is the president and a parent of the Philadelphia Home and School Council. Welcome. And we have Miss Shania Terrell, Director of Pipeline Programming for the Center of Black Educators Development. Hello, how are you?
Hello,
Welcome home,
hello.
everyone. Welcome home.
It's good to see all you guys. Thank you so much for this platform. It's appreciated.
I thank you for saying that. I really and I know that the Heart City team, we really hope that those in the community that are doing amazing work really see us as a platform that they can come to and say, hey, this is what's happening, and how can we encourage those around us to do something different, something more, whatever that something is. And I thank you all for joining, because I think there's a lot to be done. There's a lot ahead of us. Without even looking backwards, there's a lot ahead of us. And so I'm going to ask first, Ms. Shakeda Gaines, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, share with us your work at the Home and School Council.
Woo, child, the work that we
The
do.
work.
Philadelphia Homeschool Council has been around since 1897. We will be celebrating 125 years of parent organizing and parent activism on May 7th of this year. We are absolutely proud of the work we have done. All of our parents, all of our stakeholders are volunteers. We do not pay anyone for this work outside of lawyers when things, have to happen. But our goal is to ensure that every school is equitable, that every child that can walk into a school is safe from harm and danger, but also are getting the things that they need without their, this rigorous nonsense, but actually getting full education without, just all this testing. Our goals this year definitely has been to ring the alarm on the school district of Philadelphia and all the things that have been happening behind closed doors. And we're just bringing everything to light because we have been shut out of those spaces. And we are definitely trying to make sure that if we're shut out, we definitely don't want our people to be shut out. So parents, stakeholders alike, you have a voice, you have power, and we have to learn that together and connection with each other.
Thank you. I first was introduced to your work from you holding the school district accountable on social media, and I followed. I mean, and my sister, I want to say thank you. Thank you so very much. As a parent, thank you for empowering those that may not know how to use their voice. You have been a tremendous example, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I want to move to Miss Shana Terrell. You are with the Center for Black Educator Development.
Yes.
And you are the director of pipeline programming. You have done extensive work working with children and families in schools throughout our city. You've worked in freedom schools. They do amazing work to make sure that our children are culturally relevant and represented while still getting amazing academic education. The work that you guys are doing over at the Center for Black Educator Development, I want you to share with our audience a little bit about what you're doing.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, I'm Shana Terrell, Director of Pipeline Programming at the Center for Black Educator Development, and I'm excited to be here. So the center was launched in 2019. I co-launched that organization with our CEO, Mr. Sharif Al-Mekki. And the great thing about that is Mr. Al-Mekki is a Philadelphian through and through. Those of you in Philadelphia who know Mr. Al-Mekki, long time in the school district of Philadelphia, but then moved into Mastery Charter Schools and was principal of Shoemaker there for 11 years. But he is from West Philadelphia. He's a West Philadelphia native, but also son of Black Panthers. So Mr. Almeki's fight for freedom and liberation lives on, and it lives through this new movement that we're building, and that is really building or rebuilding, as we like to say, the Black teacher pipeline, and really bringing in the historic Black teaching traditions as well as Black teaching pedagogy. I have extensive history in Freedom Schools movement. I've been a part of Freedom Schools since I was a teenager. I'm
Awesome.
originally from New York, but also with that work, I was in the K-12 space here in Philadelphia for about 13 years, actually about 15 years, because I also did nonprofit work as well. So combining those skills to rebuild the Black teacher pipeline, we really seek to diversify the teacher pipeline. The research on Black teachers shows that Black teachers are not just good for Black children, they're good for everybody.
Everybody.
They're good for
Yes.
all children. Um, and we know that if a child has just one Black teacher, it increases their chances of going to college and decreases their chances of dropping out. And the chances are even greater, or the results are even greater for young Black boys, and what that means for them just to have one Black teacher. The travesty that's happening right now is that kids will go through 13 years of education and not see a single Black teacher, not
Yeah.
one. And we are working really hard to solve that problem. When we launched in 2019, we launched by using the Freedom Schools model.
Hmm.
We really modeled our programming after the Children's Defense Fund, the national model, but also a local model here in Philadelphia, Philadelphia Freedom Schools. We combined both of their models to build our own model for our Freedom Schools Literacy Academy, where we have young people, college students and high school students lead and teach in the classroom while teaching literacy and phonics skills to rising first through third graders. Um, that's one arm of what we do. Really, we really focus on three really key pillars to rebuild the Black teacher pipeline, and it's pathways and pipelines to teaching. So giving folks the avenue to actually get into teaching. The second part of that is professional learning, because once we get people in the midst and in the pipeline of teaching, it's
Yeah.
not enough just to have somebody in front of kids. They need to be able to be effective. So we really work hard on professional learning. I'm providing workshops for cultural proficiency. And lastly is advocating for critical public policy, because we know we can do all of these things, but if we're
Yeah.
not fighting a good fight of getting policy change that's going to remove these barriers to get Black folks into the pipeline, you reach halts, you reach barriers in that point. So we combine all three to really work together in the effort to rebuild the Black teacher pipeline.
I thank you. I have a very strong connection to Shoemaker. I grew up in that part of West Philadelphia. I marched to Conestoga Angels for 10 years. I was one of the founding members of that organization. And I was blessed to have Black teachers growing up. I'm grateful for Miss Barnes in the fourth grade and Miss Jones in the fifth grade and Miss Sandra Johnson in the sixth grade. I mean, that foundation. I still remember those ladies. I remember Miss Spring, my principal at Montessori Genesis 2. To this day, I could picture her face and what it felt like to walk into that building and see her at the door. And it made possibility seem so very possible to this little brown girl who had a daddy from Brooklyn, New York projects and a mama from West Philly. So I truly am grateful personally to your work. Eric, you are back, sir. You are a staple now in my Heart City lineup. I am sorry to those that feel like he has been with us a little bit too much, but you cannot have this conversation without including Eric Marsh. You truly can't. You are doing a lot of work to bring people together. You are, the partnership guy in a lot of ways, but you are also a father and you have the fathering circle. Share with our audience just a little bit about you. And then, guys, we're going to get into this dialogue because there is a lot for us to unpack. But I want our
Yeah.
audience to know who each of you are and why this lineup or this panel was so critical.
So first, let me just start off by saying you don't need me here because you have two warriors on this. I can
I do.
honestly
I
say,
do.
I really appreciate the ladies that are on here, and I can honestly. So two interesting, bits of connection. Again, I tell people all the time, forget 66 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon. We are 2 degrees of separation in Philly.
Mhm.
First of all, Miss Gaines, it's great to see you. Ms. Gaines has been a warrior for our children for a very
Yes.
long time. Even before leading Philadelphia Homeschool Council, she has been fighting for our children, both figuratively and sometimes literally out there.
Yeah.
But this is the truth. This is sometimes it comes to that, right? And also I just want to also give a shout out. So part of my introduction that I wanted to share is I am the newly appointed chairman of the Mayor's Commission on African American Males here in the city of Philadelphia. And I only share that because my brother Sharif El Mekki was one of the first people that I reached out to in relation to this issue. And so I'm happy to announce that the Mayor's Commission on African American Males is going to be partnering with on the Black Male Educators Convening Conference this fall.
Yay! Welcome. Thank you.
Our support and then our voice to adding additional Black male educators and Black educators in general. So
Yeah.
this is like a little like pre-family reunion right here. So,
It is. And I'm excited about that. And I hope our audience really understands that, the voices here have done the work. You guys are doing the work every single day. And I want them to listen to what you guys have to share, because that what you're sharing is not just theory. It
Yeah.
is practice
Mhm.
for you guys. And there is a lot in all of you. So let's get into this conversation, as they would say, the young people. Let's get into it.
Oh,
Okay.
Kendall, I wanted to.
Yes.
So you asked me about the fathering circle, and I'm just going to throw this
Yes.
in there, and then I'm going to jump in the background because, the reality is, you mentioned the fathering circle, which I'm a co-founder and executive director of. We've been around for 5 years. We've been served hundreds of fathers through our peer support groups that we do every month,
Mhm.
and we also do play dates with fathers and children. But the reason why that's significant to this conversation is because we encourage fathers to be an educator to their children at the earliest stages of life, right?
Yeah.
And so understanding that, yes, moms have been holding it down for a very long time, but dads have a level of not just responsibility, but a different type of connection to children than what
Yes.
mothers have. And so our children can't flourish without that balanced parenting. And the reality is that just in terms of the efforts of the Black Male Educators Convening and other organizations, understanding that statistical impact that men have when they're in a classroom, we want to be able to, again, encourage that pipeline development that our guest talked about earlier, starting with fatherhood. From
Yeah.
as soon as they come out the womb, the reality is that we have to put them on that gauge. So I just wanted to share that. That's the perspective and information that I'm bringing, and I'm going to get out the way.
Well, I think you're not going to get out the way, because
He's
since
not. He's not. He's not. We're not
because
going to let him. We're not going to let him.
exactly. But just to jump into our comments before we get started, this has been dubbed the Heart City TV Family Cookout. Okay. The family cookout is about to get going. And Eric, we're putting you on the grill. Okay. So you're working the grill, my brother. You're working.
Okay. All right. I got it. Okay. Good.
So I think, your work around fathers, and you've already kind of touched on my question that I wanted to ask you, and hope that you could to enlighten our community. Fathers have a unique connection to children. And I think in our system, we have really shaped it around how mothers connect. And sometimes that leaves the fathers systematically out, because their connection hasn't even seriously been considered. We have a superintendent that is coming into our district. He's new. He's not a Philly guy, so he doesn't understand how our neighborhoods work, how our community moves throughout, and what love and support looks like, because it might be a little bit different than what it does in Rowan County, North Carolina, where he's coming from. And I just wanted you to share with our audience, share with us, what does the connection for a father look like when they are trying to serve, and they are serving, their children in the school, not just with the child intimately, but how can we build strong partnerships and be intentional about those partnerships with fathers?
Well, first of all, allow fathers in the building, right? I'm going to say, starting with public schools right there, the reality is that many of them are not welcoming to parents in general, and definitely not welcoming to fathers.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that, our society has dubbed fathers as secondary parents, right? It's mothers carry the child, give birth. The reality is that because of that intimate connection, that literal physical connection,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, and historically, fathers have been required to be the protector, be the provider, like go out and hunt the animal, bring it home, and like feed the family.
Right.
And that's all relevant, right? But we live in a global economy now. That all of that is changing. All the roles are changing. Gender
Mm-hmm.
roles are changing. And the reality is that we are simply talking about equal parenting. And when you talk about equal parenting, that means you have two coaches for your child, right? You have mom
Mm-hmm.
and dad. You have two
Right.
mentors. You have two teachers. And so, as a society, we need to understand that first and foremost. Then, what we can then understand is the nuance that fathers bring to those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's relevant, right? Because when you look at the state of our society today, you look at the condition of what we're facing. We're in Philadelphia. We've been dealing with massive gun violence issues for
Mm-hmm.
many years. The predominant impacts boys of color, specifically
Mm-hmm.
young black men, both
Mm-hmm.
as the perpetrators and the victims. And a lot of that has to do, in my opinion, not have anything to do with where mothers or women have fallen off, but it's where fathers and male figures have not been present to guide young people during that really important time when you're going through puberty. You're trying to figure out your social space in society. It's a known fact that fathers help young boys and girls relate to the world in a physical way,
Mm-hmm.
understanding social dynamics. And think about the lack of coaching and mentoring programs in our communities. We've already talked about the impact that black male educators have on students of
Yes.
all colors, right? So there
Mm-hmm.
is a benefit there, but because we live in a society that has devalued and actually persecuted fathers. I talk to fathers all the time who mention that they have an arrest record or they have some issue, some blemish in their background that prevents them from filling a role in the child's life when they really want to be there, right? We have
Right.
to start eliminating those barriers for men that want to be there. A lot of people now, over the past couple of years, are talking about lived experience, right? And how oftentimes people who are returning citizens, predominantly men, coming back into communities, they've
Mm-hmm.
learned their lesson. They've been stripped away from a community and stripped away from their children, and they want to provide. They want to give,
Right.
but they can't because there's some systemic barriers there. There's some bureaucracy or red tape that's there. And so we need to figure out ways to eliminate that. And when you do that, you will see men step into a role and flourish in a way that mothers and women can't.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you will see children respond differently. I often tell the story, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I often tell the story about how my children saved my life
Mm-hmm.
simply by asking me to come to school with them. When I
Mm-hmm.
was at a time in my life when I was deeply depressed, going through a transition that was really, really difficult, my one responsibility that got me out of the bed in the morning because and got me to deal with my depression was my children asking me to come into the school building with them in the morning. And it was
Mm-hmm.
the principal at Steele Elementary School, Jamal Dennis, who
Mm.
saw this father walking in the door with his kids and saw the response of other kids that didn't know me, right?
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I want to encourage and I want to spread across the school district and understand that I am specifically talking to the dads out there. Now, moms, we already know there's some
Mm-hmm.
challenges that we ought to get. We got it. Sometimes you got to step to the side or step back or pivot a little bit. Sometimes dad ain't always right. He ain't acting right. He may not even always be present. But if we can encourage that presence and that energy
Mm-hmm.
and that participation, the children absolutely soar. They take off. They flourish. And so, yeah, that's it.
So you're talking. You've mentioned a lot that to me fits into this creating a safe space
Mm.
where all feels welcome. I when I hear the conversations begin around Black fathers or fathers in general, I hear the conversation being centered around safe corridors, still outside of the building.
Yes.
I hear the conversations about be present and be at basketball games and football games. And what you're talking about is creating a space that is inside the building, but that space has to systematically first be created because they're not welcomed
It's gotta,
in this
yes,
space.
we have to understand that fathers have a range of
Right.
capabilities, right? And that I mean, when you mention inside or outside, first of all, yeah, we could get to the safe corridors thing. Kendra Brooks, Steele Elementary, Nikki Bagby, all the parents there 5, 6, 8 years ago, we were talking about safe corridors around Steele because the environment was dangerous. So the fact
Right.
that Dr. Height is talking about it now, I'm happy, right? But I can only be but so excited when we've been trying for this for a long time. So
Right.
folks out there, no, it's no shade to Dr. Height, but don't think that it was his idea, right? The other thing I want to say is Brent Johnstone and Akeith Staples, Fathers Read 365. They have been a nonprofit organization where fathers go into buildings and libraries and read to babies, all
Right.
about encouraging that illiteracy levels, right? So there's
Mhm.
so many different things that fathers bring to the table. We just want to be partners and we want to be collaborators with not only mom but also school administrators and teachers.
So I want to kind of pivot over to Miss Shana Terrell, Miss Terrell, and I'm going to come, Miss Shakeda. I know you got a lot to say about this topic, but I want to kind of connect this to how we create this space inside the buildings, inside the culture that is in the buildings. Because at the Center for Black Educator Development, you guys are not, I'm sure you're not just teaching or helping the teachers in the classroom, but maybe even the administrators that create the system around it. How do we how do we get this started? Where do we start?
So it's interesting, this concept that I'm hearing Eric talk about, because it doesn't only fit with Black fathers, it also fits with Black male teachers,
Mhm.
and not being able to create a safe space for Black men even, in the system of education. So what I'm thinking about as I hear him talk is like, wow, it's crazy because the situations are parallel, meaning in education or in life, Black men are only seen as these one-dimensional or monolithic characters, which is just not true. So even when you
Right.
have a Black male educator in the building, he's called upon to be the disciplinarian.
Yes,
That's it.
climate.
Right. So it's
Mhm.
a bunch of like black tax or teacher tax on this man. We need you to come in here to get the kids together. Oh, these kids don't have a father figure. We need you to come and be that to these kids.
Mhm.
All while ignoring all of the other qualities and all the other strengths that this man has.
Mhm.
Meaning he is an educator in the sense of like he has an academic skill, he has content knowledge. Um,
Right.
how many Black male administrators do you see? How many Black male principals do you see? How many of them are in curriculum? How many are used for that particular expertise? Those doors aren't open for them. But some of the work that we do is definitely around helping to coach administrators and helping to coach schools, because the one thing we don't want to do is spend all this time recruiting all of these Black teachers and really spending
Yes.
all this time getting the pipeline together for teachers to leave in 3 years. We know
Yes.
that it is a revolving door in education for teachers, period. And we know now more than any time right now, we are facing one of the scariest times in terms of a teacher shortage. We have
Mhm.
seats to fill and not enough people in the pipeline in it to fill. So with
Yes.
that, we also have to be preparing schools to be able to, once you get a Black teacher, how do you nurture that Black teacher? How do you grow that Black teacher? How do you keep that Black teacher? And a lot of that is centered around cultural proficiency. And a lot of times people think cultural proficiency is just in terms of race. Like you got to know how to relate to people. It's
Right.
way more than that. It is what it says. Cultural proficiency. There's a culture. So yep, there's a culture of being Black. There's a culture of being white, but there's a culture of being a man. There's a culture of being a woman.
Mhm.
All of that is cultural. They're cultural to your neighborhoods. So how as Eric talks about Still Elementary, I spent some time working at Simon Gratz. There is a culture right there in that area, just in North Philly, that if you
Yes.
don't know and you don't understand those people, don't even come and talk to them because they
Right.
have their own ways of working, their own ways of being in their own culture. So what we do try to train people to do is understand what cultural proficiency means. And no, that doesn't look like, oh, I'm dealing with Black children, so I'm going to change all the names on the test to something that I think is an ethnic name. That's not what cultural proficiency is. Oh, because I'm working with Black children, I'm going to bring in rap music, and that's how I'm going to get them connected to the career. And that is and again, if you're coaching teachers, if you're teaching people, means on the spectrum to be culturally proficient. And how to create, and through that, you learn how to create a safe space for fathers. You learn how to create a safe space for the community to come in, and you learn how to be an active partner in the life of a child and an active partner in building a liberating education for children and families.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Simon Gratz. I just want to throw that in there right
okay.
there.
Definitely shout out. Shout out to Nicetown. Shout out to those folks. Great.
Yeah. Nicetown it's different. When I went into the KUA world, I'm a West Philly girl, and when KUAs came to hit the scene, I guess that was 2013, 2014 when KUAs hit the scene. I was placed in the 35th and 39th police districts in KUA 5, and I grew up in West Philly, and I had worked in West Philly and South Philly. I had to learn Nicetown. Shout out to Majida Rashid.
Majida, yes.
Gave me a quick round robin education of, sis, this is how you do it up here. And I was like, thank you, because it's different than how it would interact with the families down at Barrett Middle School and Childs Elementary School. And that difference wasn't wrong. It was just different. It was just, I need to approach things a little bit different, and I can't use the same strategies and techniques up here. They just don't fly, and vice versa. Shakeda, the conversation, around how do we make sure and how do we hold schools accountable for creating a culture and a space where parents and the community, because sometimes the value of the Black male is not necessarily a father in that school, but they have so much to give. How do we help hold them accountable, but still keep our children safe? Because the first thing many administrators are going to say is, I have to keep my children safe. And we don't want to take that away from them.
Absolutely. So first, I want to say that Philadelphia Homeschool Council does a father voice every year, because we realize that most of the women up top on council we are all women, and we were not giving the voice back to our men. And this year we kind of postponed it because I couldn't find Eric information. So
I send it to you, sis.
He was one of the first people that did it with us, when we first, came out with this. Yeah. And we were not going to end this in the 125 without having Eric on that panel. So shout out to Eric and all them. And then shout out to our fathers who are actually homeschool officers or presidents of their school, which a lot of people just don't know, that there are a lot of men who sit in these schools who are a part of the Home and School Association. So that's one thing. The other thing is, it has to start from up top. At the end of the day, leadership has to come down and say, this is what the standard is. And the standard is that you can't tell this father he can't come here to see his child.
Mm-hmm.
The standard is, if this father wants to come in here, stop calling him on the phone just because there's a disciplinarian problem. Call him because, hey, your child did an excellent job. I think you should come up here and eat pizza with me and your child because we want to celebrate that baby. Include them, but that has to come again from up top. Now, what I do love about some teachers is some teachers understand that. They understand what it means to not have a father, or to have a father that was a part of their life. So they invite the father out. But stop just doing the tea with dads, donuts with dads.
Donuts with dads.
Oh, yeah. That's so, it's cute. It's not, it's a step, but it's like the babyest step you can find when a child is crawling on the floor and you have not given them the full, you haven't given them the full school. Stop calling them just for trips. Right. Call your dad and say, hey, Dad, listen, I got a SAC position open. I got a home and school position open. I need you here because I need your voice. I need you to talk to other men because I need men in this space. So one person in this district that's doing it right, and I'm just going to shout her out. I can't remember the principal's name. Maybe Eric can. The principal for Bazoon. She has
Bradley.
Yes, I
oh
was just about to say Miss Bradley.
Principal
my
Bradley.
God.
Mhm.
Yeah, she has so many male teachers, so many male, and people are being involved in this because she understood that the assignment. Can we say that? She understood the assignment. That's what kids say. She understood the assignment. She understood it. She understood the assignment. And the assignment was to ensure that those children in that neighborhood who may not have a father in their house or may not have a grandparent or may not have a mom needed a male voice or a male hug or just somebody to sit down to feel protected, because that's what a lot of us women, and let's go there, we don't feel protected. A lot of our children don't feel protected, and sometimes we just need that space. It doesn't mean that I don't know how to protect myself, but sometimes it feels good to know that there's someone that's going to be there to protect me. So how do we move to this realm? We start from the top. We get principals like Ms. Bradley to do these workshops to teach other principals how it's done. And then we move down into our community. Because if leadership is not doing right, we're going to always get fights that I have to jump in. And when I got to jump in it, it's a problem.
I think our audience is very clear where we don't want to call Miss Shakeda Gaines for the problems, but she's willing. She's willing to take that battle for us if need be, and we are grateful for that. But I appreciate this conversation because we're not just talking about protection in this physical sense, right? That's not the conversation, and we understand the importance of the presence of men in our children's education on every single level, right? Mr. Oglesby at Girls High was my man. I mean, he set the tone for the building, for that floor, second floor. You went to the second floor, and that was his whole floor. And it wasn't a disciplinary tone. It was just, like you were on dad's floor. You knew that you were on dad or uncle's floor. And it was a safe space. And I think back to Mr. Dwayne Watts over at Mastery Charter School and how my little cousin was like, how do you know Mr. Dwayne? I go in his classroom every day just to sit and talk to him. And she was going there into his classroom to talk to him when her mother was severely ill. And he didn't even know all that was going on, but she was comfortable in his space, and I am grateful that we are having this conversation. I think we also have to talk a little bit, though, about the impact of comprehensive wraparound services. When I started out in 2000, in the year 2000, coming out of college, I mean, wraparound was everywhere. Maybe back then a little bit too much. There was a wraparound worker. You had like 5 or 6 of them sitting in the classroom, right? Everybody was in there with a bag of chips and a soda, sitting in the back of their classroom, waiting to intervene with the child. But there are some true wraparound needs, and that name for the service is important because it's not just an intervention. It is truly designed, or should be designed, to wrap around the child and the services that they need, be that connector that moves them from space to space, home to school, community, back around, wrap around. And so how do we ensure that our children are having access to that? IEPs, are they really being followed? Are the connections being made? Are we taking into consideration those 504s? Ms. Terrell, as you work with educators and you work with teachers that are struggling because they have a lot on their plate. So when you have maybe 2 or 3 children that have some very unique challenges and need some certain strategies implemented on top of the 17 to 20 other children in your classroom, how do we support those educators in those spaces? And what's next? Like, how do we get those services back?
So you touch on something that's extremely complex, and
Mhm.
the reason why it's really complex is because at the heart of this, of course, we know the folks that suffer are our students with the special needs,
Mhm.
meaning teachers aren't getting the proper support and they aren't getting the proper training to be able to support students adequately. And a lot of times that starts at the top. And because teachers are the first line of defense, right? Like they're the soldiers on the ground, they get the majority of the blame. And they
Mhm.
get the majority of the blame because it's like seeing a pot on fire and you don't have the capability nor the skill to be able to put it out. And that's
Mhm.
really working and supporting the needs of that child in front of you. But if I'm not properly equipped, if I don't have the tools to do it, if nobody's taught me to do it, if I'm not coached, if I'm not supported, how am I able to go forth and do that? And I think a lot of times, again, that responsibility is put on the teacher. And as a parent, I just want my child to get what they are supposed to get. I need my child to have the services. I need my child to have the.
Mhm.
We sat down, you called me in for this meeting. You told me that these were the IEPs. You told me that every teacher would be versed in this, and I want to see what accommodations need to be made for my child. Or you
Right.
call me in and you telling me my child is not making progress. I want to know why. And of course, the automatic blame goes to the teacher because parents aren't thinking about what teachers aren't getting, right? They're
Right.
like, you here, you getting paid, why not? Right. So you get a lot of that as a combinations of stuff, which is like I said, what makes it super really complex to touch upon and deal with. And then when you speak about wraparound services, you have to talk about the money that's allocated for those actual services, right?
Mhm.
Meaning beyond just the school districts that get money to be, allocated to those services, the nonprofit organizations or the specialty organizations whose money or budgets were cut to be able to provide those services were for
Right.
or folks who are knowledgeable and skillful in some of the diagnoses that students have, and what again support they're getting for training, what
Right.
money they're getting to be able to advocate and support children or students in school. A lot of that stuff has been cut and is missing and misplaced. A lot of what I've seen happen over the course of the last couple years, I say about the last 10 years, what happens to our
Mhm.
special needs, they all get corralled and put in one school. If your
One building.
needs are too greater or too high, you're going to
Mhm.
do private placement, or you're going to the school that specializes with students with special needs. Like they're all the same, right? Like they're all
Right.
in a way. And then you walk into those schools, and we know what those tend to be, right? Nothing but gateways to school to prison pipeline.
Mhm.
That's all that they are. Um, but at the Center for Black Educator Development, again, we continue to build culturally proficient educators who can advocate for students and advocate for what they need inside the classroom to be able to support students.
Uh, you know, I this topic is very personal when you start talking about IEPs. This is, my baby suffered from lead poisoning as a toddler, severe lead poisoning, and that led to some developmental delays. And I was quick to navigate that special education um, pathway for her, but I was versed in it
Yep.
and I was prepared for it. And I had supports to back me up in the areas that I didn't know. And so many of our parents don't have those supports. Fathers sometimes don't even have a clue about what's happening because they're sometimes not even invited to that conversation. Eric, how do we lay out a an environment or even a strategy to help parents feel supported, because sometimes they're quick to blame but they don't know what else to do but blame, if that makes sense.
Well, again, I think one of the challenges again, and this was already expressed, it's a broken system,
It
right? I
is.
love the fact that what was shared earlier. I think you used the word misplaced, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
only we're mismanaging funds, misplacing funds. That
Wasting
means
them.
it goes, yeah, it's going someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is money that could be allocated towards resources. I think our school district, in all honesty and fairness, we need to be looking at our school district leaders in the city, not just the school district, because I got a whole issue about how separate the school district is from city government and how they got their own thing, and you ain't got to really. But we gonna separate. But we need to be looking at our school system
Mm-hmm.
from a triage standpoint. We are in a state of emergency. Our
Mm-hmm.
youth and our students, our buildings, our teachers, everybody is in a state of
Mm-hmm.
emergency at this point. And the problem is the funding and the resources, you depending on who you ask, right? Because this new budget that's out there, they're talking about there's more money in the budget than it's ever been before, more resources than it's ever been since 2011, but yet we're still losing teachers, we're losing counselors, we're losing librarians, we're losing, like, where's this money going?
Do we have librarians, Eric? I'm not joking.
No,
We truly
no, we have 5 in the city, in the school district of Philadelphia. We have 5,
That's
and
my
we do
point.
not have libraries. And the libraries that are in there are truly a teacher's library in their own classroom.
Listen, at Steele School, and I've referred to Steele. Steele is only one of 6 schools that I was a parent advocate or volunteer in. So I talk about Steele a lot because my youngest 2 babies, that's where we spent the most time, and I was able to kind of learn under the wings of some of these amazing women in our community, right? But the reality is we use the library at Steele as a community gathering place.
That's where I was getting at.
But I want to jump back to your question in terms of, you know, this issue of IEPs. One of the fellow commissioners on the mayor's commission, Mike Robertson, is in schools right now. He's working in schools. He's a behavioral health specialist, but he came out of retirement. He was in schools 10 years ago. So when you talked about your time in the KUAs and understanding the resources that were available, one of the things that he brought to my attention most recently was the disparity, the difference between what our kids used to get 10 years ago and what they're getting now. And even though our society and our community and the school district is in a greater sense of emergency, everything is on fire at this point.
Right.
It's fewer drops of water getting to the issues at hand. I love the analogy earlier about understanding how to put this pot of fire out. Every child that's having a behavioral health crisis in that school, most of them for very good reasons, right? Most of them for very good reasons. There isn't a space. So when you talk about how do we navigate, how do we create this space, the first thing is to have a culture of understanding within the building, and then welcome parents and community resources into that building through the use of your SAC, right? Through the use of community advisory panels, through the use of friends of committees, right? These are things that are resources that are available to parents and schools across the district, but not every school is using them adequately. It's like you have a whole toolbox. That's one thing I will give credit to the school district of Philadelphia is that they have, if you go to the website, you got to do some digging, but there's a whole lot of resources and things that are mentioned, but we often as parents don't even know that they're there. We don't know how to implement them. We don't know what emergency, what kind of fire can this tool put out, right? So there's a whole communal process that need to happen. And I want to give a shout out again. You mentioned Sister Majida earlier, Majida Rashid in Nicetown. She was actually one of our SAC members when we were there at school, because understanding the just the legacy and the depth of knowledge that one individual in the community can bring into that space. We definitely no, we need to bring these community members, these leaders into this space. So that's some of the first things is the school district needs to understand to make the buildings more accessible and opening and inviting to parents and community members. We need to understand that you can call on parents for things that aren't bad or bad behavior. You can utilize the men in the community for more than just muscle, right? If I found out another Black man is called a dean or a climate manager, I'm gonna pull my hair out, and I ain't got much left. So the reality is that there's a whole system that we can put in place, but it's as the sister said, it starts at the top. We need to change the understanding of perspective as administration. I got a chance to sit in on 2 of the 3 interview panels for the new superintendents. So I one of the last questions that I asked Dr. Watlington was, we're in a state of emergency. Our young men are killing themselves, are killing one another. Many of them are not even attending school.
Right.
The times that gun violence is happening is moving up earlier and earlier into the day. What are some strategies that we can implement? He had 30 seconds left. He couldn't answer the question. So believe me, we're going to revisit this conversation with him as soon as possible.
And I think that's a nice segue to, as we close up the conversation and HeartCity audience, I recognize one, we're already 20 minutes past. We're almost close to 20 minutes past where we normally close up our show, but the conversation is just way too important to be confined by time. And so allow me the freedoms to act like a Baptist preacher right now and say, I'm almost done, even though I'm not almost done.
Them family cookouts,
It's how the family cookout works, right? But I think Mr. Watlington is coming into a unique situation. He is not coming into a school district, a school district of Philadelphia size and legacy, and resources, at least from a city of our size. We're the sixth largest city in the country, right? So we should have certain resources and available for our school district, and that separation of school district from city is major. I mean, listen, we all know the impact of the school reform commission, right, on our school district and the work. But without spending too much time in our past and looking forward to him coming in, and we're going to be getting to know him. So I'm going to tell you guys, I've been doing my research on him because he's serving a community just north of me, where I currently reside in North Carolina. And I am familiar with families that are living in his school district and sending their children to his school district. And they're a little sad that he's leaving. They're not excited about his departure. So that speaks volumes, right? That speaks volumes. And I think it's important. And I was hoping that we could close up today's show with the understanding that this conversation is not done, but closing up today's show with looking forward. What is one of the first things that your organization, and I'm posing this question to each of you, that your organization or your path of advocacy can support Mr. Watlington in his arrival, especially understanding that he's culturally from down south. He's not a northerner. Well, he does have some foundations in New Jersey. From my understanding. But how do we support him? How do we give him, in all honesty, a fair shot and give him the support? Not that, theoretical support, but true support as he takes on this new position and this major work. I'm gonna start with you, Ms. Gaines. I'm gonna let you lead this one.
Okay, so let's talk about where he came from. So first and foremost, Mr. Warrington came from being a janitor to a teacher to a principal to a superintendent, and that speaks volumes for me. Because that means that he done the work, but he also knows what it feels like to be in all those positions. I mean, he's already been a parent as well. He knows what that looks like to be a Black man coming into this and everything else. I believe, honestly, how we can support him is ensuring that the traps that are laid for him, we are there to protect him from. And that's just being honest. We have to think about what happened 10 years ago, and not to go too far back, but let's talk about it. When Dr. Hite got here, he had came here after 2 interims had already left, okay? We had just had a major budget crisis, and then the state cut our budget completely in half. And then the next year, we was excited to have him, and then the next year he came with school closings. We have to be prepared for that to ensure that does not happen this time, because right now those budgets that just came out in the last couple of weeks were awful to the schools that came through. We are still fighting up in Harrisburg right now about our money and how to get equity for all schools. So there is still budget crisis that's going to happen. We have teachers who are walking out of our doors every single day. There is almost 169 plus resignations every single month at those Board of Education meetings. How do we support him? We support him by not fussing about it right now. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to support him in. June 30th is my last day as the president of the Philadelphia Home and School Council. It's because of the fact that, bylaws are bylaws and votes, and it's time for me to go. But it makes sense for him to get a new president that is not saturated in hate, hurt, or pain. I want him to have a full, new existence when it comes down to PHSC,
Fresh
because
start.
the work has already been done. So my job now is to ensure that the team that comes through is also supporting him, but also still speaking. But I'm watching the traps. So as the traps come, protecting that space, but also protecting my parents, teachers, and staff in another way. So that's the first thing I can do for him, is support that, and then making sure that he ensured that there in every school there is a home and school and a SAC, so they can protect their school if in fact school closures start.
So for our audience, because SAC has come up, that acronym has come up quite a few times. Please tell our audience what the SAC is.
It is a school advisory council that was created. And here's all my shade. It was created to remove home in schools. Shade, throw, toss. It didn't
I
happen.
understand.
It didn't happen. We're still here. But their point is to get data and give that information to the principal. And I think Eric explained that a little bit more better because he sat on those SACs. But their goal is truly to look at true data of what works in this school and what doesn't work in this school. And a home and school job is truly to advocate for the things that are necessary for these schools and not just be used as a fundraiser tool, as we're just throwing money to the schools. We are here to truly advocate and have a real voice as a parent. So when you add that SAC and that home and school, along with PST leadership and along with CASA leadership, and you have SEIU all in there, that's a staple for a school and how you protect it. So I think that's the one thing we can do is, one, teach people how to protect their schools, but also how to have grace and mercy for this gentleman walking in, even though we are scorned.
I think that is very fair. And I'm so thankful that you said that, because that was really the premise of today's show. The foundation of today's show is that the future of our children is really depending upon the grace and mercy that we give this gentleman coming in, willing to take this battle. He's going to war. When he gets here, June 30th, he's going to war, but we can support him in that battle. Eric,
I want to jump in real quick and just say,
you go ahead.
One of the ways that we can support him is that don't have him going to war with you, right? The reality is that one of my colleagues today, like, Philly is a tough city. We're not going to talk about, I'm trying not to talk bad about my city, born and raised here. I'm not going to bring up Santa and snowballs and nothing like that.
I feel about that.
The reality is that Philly is a tough town, and he's new here. And he's going to need guidance. He's going to need support. He's going to need that grace and mercy. And one of the things that he's not going to need is a bunch of angry, resentful folks who are, we do this. And I've said this about Dr. Hyde many a year, and people know that, I got a thing about me, and I got a thing about Dr. Hyde. That's just me, my personal thing. I'll go to therapy for it soon. But the reality is that, as Shakeda said, right, oftentimes when you come to Philly, you step into a pre-existing hornet's nest, right? So what really needs to happen is, I want the parents out there to understand that, understanding Ms. Gaines' shade about SACs, the reality is that one of the things that we talked about in not only Steele but at other schools was the possibility for parents to utilize all of these tools. You want to use a home and school council and have it at your school. You want to make sure that there's a SAC at your school, and don't let the principal take over the SAC, because the principal and teachers are allowed to sit on the SAC, but don't let them run it amok. Right? You got to have a partnership there. Involve yourself with FACE, the community engagement department at the school district. Involve yourself with the Fact Academy. Involve yourself in organizations like Our City, Our Schools, and the Black Male Educators Collective, right? Understand that there's a plethora of ways that you, as a concerned citizen, whether you got a student in the school district or not, whether you are a parent or not, can get involved and help navigate this thing. Because again, one of the things our community has an issue with is we love a messiah complex, right? We want one person to come in and save us, and that is not what Dr. Watlington is going to be able to do. As a matter of fact, as Ms. Gaines said earlier, he's stepping into a situation that, in all honesty, the person that's in his position after his 5 years is probably going to be in a better resourced position than he is. It's up to us to figure out how collectively, for the benefit of our children, to move this district, in my opinion, through a triage lens towards like a healthier, safer state for everyone involved. So,
yeah. One of the things that you said, Eric, and I'm going to pass this over to you right next, Ms. Terrell, is it reminded me of when Reverend Brown said that deacons and elders are equal in status, but both very important to the parish and to the kingdom of God earlier in our show today. As an ordained deacon, that is not a lower position. And so home and school and SAC, while they may have been, one created to kind of change the direction, if used together, they have greater value, greater added value, and giving the power back to the families, to the parents, which balances the school community as a whole.
And also the Home and School Council is a nonprofit organization that's separate and distinct from the School District of Philadelphia. So they, one, need your support, but two, also are not beholden to the school district, right? So we need to understand a balance of power. When you talk about that equity, you got to have somebody inside and somebody outside. And if you use them both, you can get some change.
Okay. Ms. Terrell.
So I know we're running on time, so I'm going to hit on two.
Time. Listen, take your time. I'm Baptist Baptist. Take your time, honey.
Girl, here we go.
Two quick points.
Go ahead, Pastor.
On how we could really support Mr. Wallington. So one, I think of just as like a person, a parent, right? If we help parents and community understand the ways in which the school district of Philadelphia actually works, I think that would be beneficial to Mr. Wallington. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of anger or resentment becomes misplaced. Like you are supposed to do this, or you can change this, or you can do that. When you understand the entities and the way it works, it's super bureaucratic. And there are certain things that he is going to take on inside his own school district cabinet and administration, things like we just don't understand and haven't seen. And he can't snap his finger like this and make certain things happen. It works like that. He's also beholden to the board as well. And what they say and what they vote on and things of that nature. But I think if we do a better job of helping families and community understand the power of the system, I think that will help folks understand how to better support him. Because I think, again, a lot of times, because we run in a system in a society, period, where everything is about the figurehead and the person that's in charge, and we don't understand the system or the machine that's driving that, that causes us to think that one man or one person or one thing can make the change, when it really is a collective effort of a bunch of things. And it's really a collective effort of things like the SAC or the home and school to tear down a system to be able to empower Mr. Wallington to be able to be successful. So I think that is where the change has to happen from the inside, with people really understanding how this all works, so we can hit where it needs to hit. If we need to tear the machine apart, where are the points in the machine that need to be ripped apart? It ain't Mr. Wallington. He just got here.
It's not him yet. Right.
And it may not ever be, meaning the decisions that he is making, he is coming into a system that is pushing him to drive and thrive a certain way. It's not a mistake that the school district of Philadelphia has been running the way it's running for a certain amount of years. It doesn't matter who's in charge. The system and the machine, people are just getting on a bike and still pedaling. How do we rip that thing down and build out a motorcycle where the people in the community and the new superintendent will be able to feel empowered? And I think that is what will help support him, really figuring out how to help people understand how the school district actually work, and helping parents and community understand where their power really lies and who we actually need to be holding accountable. Because it just can't be this new superintendent. He's not going to have a magic pill or magic bullet, and he has things working against him because he is coming from the outside. He already got people preying on his downfall. So I agree with what the two of you have already said in terms of how do you not get in his way as well? How do we really turn ourselves into being a support and advocate for this brother? Because you got people who are literally just mad because he's not from here. He don't need to be here. He don't know what to do just because he's not from here.
Right.
That type
Which
of
I think if you go back to what Eric stated this in a previous show, that while they're upset that he's not from here, one of the main things that when asked what they were looking for in a superintendent was experience being a superintendent. Therefore, those that are here that have not done it already didn't meet the criteria that we set. That meaning the community, the parents, the key stakeholders, like listening to both sides of what we say. And I think everything that you guys are saying is so critical. I'm hearing town hall.
We're gonna be here all night. Yes, town hall.
Because I was about to go in with that.
Because we need to talk about that pipeline. Yes, that's that pipe.
I'm getting text messages from my executive producer saying I gotta wrap it up.
Well, one more thing before you wrap, because I said I had 2 ways. One more thing, and this is a really simple thing. A way that the Center for Black Educator Development can support Mr. Wallington. He said in his statements that he is looking to create programs for aspiring educators. He's looking for ways to retain, recruit, and train teachers. That is what we do. We have programs right now in partnership with the School District of Philadelphia where we are inviting young people to go ahead and be teachers or explore the concept of teaching connected with social justice.
Yes.
So he already has partners in his midst, in the network, that are willing to do that. And to solve this teacher shortage and this teacher crisis, we have to invest in the children that are right in front of us right now. And we continue to spin on a hamster wheel. If you want future teachers, you are looking dead at them sitting in the classrooms in the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th grades. That is your future generation. Those are your future generation of teachers. You have to invest in them. And the Center for Black Educator Development is willing to do that and willing to partner with Mr. Wallington when he gets here to continue on that.
And so to tie this all up in a pretty bow, what Ms. Terrell just said is the next generation that 10 years out is in the 9th grade right now.
Absolutely. If you build a CTE program for teaching,
if
you build that in these schools,
they will come.
You're having these conversations.
They will come. Yes.
Yep. And that is a battle that we've been fighting in the district to get them to support that. We are in partnership right now with SLA Bieber to build that. They have opened their doors to us to go ahead and pilot our programs and our curriculum. We just need a partner in the district to make it universal, to make it for everybody, open to all kids.
Call us.
So I want to thank you guys. I'm going to have to wrap us up. We're at 8:36. It has been an amazing, amazing show. And I thank you so very much. This conversation is just starting. And I had a feeling that it was going to move this quickly and go this wide. But I'm thankful that you guys chose to come here and share this information. HeartCity is the platform for that. We want to take these very important issues and, dig deep into them, dig very deep. Listen, I'm going to make sure that the three of you stay connected just in case, you don't get into the chat quickly, but I'm also going to make sure that our audience can connect with you guys too, because the work that you're doing is important. Families, parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, the Home and School Council is for you. You have to take your talent, your gift, your voice there. The SAC, I learned a lot. I sit on the SIT team. I believe it is the same thing as the SAC, where parents partner with educators to dive into the data and guide us on what we like to call educated movement, for forward motion for our students in the school. And so, there's a lot of work. The Center for Black Educator Development, it speaks volumes just in the name of the organization. I always say names have power. The name of this organization in itself is just powerful because it tells you exactly what they want to do. And that pipeline is so critical. We're watching people make light of the teacher mass exodus on Reels, on TikTok, and on IG, but it's not funny when it really hits at home, and it's hitting at home right now. And so I thank you guys. I don't know what else to say, but you guys will be back. So don't ignore my emails. I'm calling, Shakeda, don't ignore me.
I will not ignore your emails.
Thank you.
You have my phone number. You can call me at any time.
I sure will. HeartCity family, I want to thank you, Eric, Shakeda, Shania. Thank you,
Shayna.
Shayna. I don't know why I keep saying Shania. Shayna. And I apologize for that. Shayna, we thank you. Heart City, our audience, we thank you for coming and joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Heart City family, you need to like, share, subscribe this show. Listen, go to YouTube. I know many of you are on our Facebook page, but go to YouTube, like, subscribe, and share. This show was important. This show is just a stepping stone. The future of our children is in our hand. The resources this was just a small sample of resources that Philadelphia has. And with true collaboration and preparation, the district can do amazing things for our young people. The next generation of teachers are right in our 8th and 9th grade right now. There's a lot of work to be done, but we're up for the task. We are a strong city, a very, very strong city. Before I close, I want to wish Pastor Chira Smith a very happy birthday. You are a true friend to the show. You have been a supporter of all the work that we do here at Heart City, and me personally. I want to wish you, my dear friend, my dear sister, a very, very happy birthday. And to our Heart City audience, thank you for sticking it out with us for an hour and 40 minutes. I know we took a little bit time today, but thank you. And with that, I say good night. And this is Heart City TV, and I'm your host, Kendall Chase.